liberating Bani Walid. It is just a matter of time, according to fighters from Libya's National Transitional Council. But why is there such strong resistance from pro-Gaddafi forces even after the fall of Tripoli? And what has made this town so central to the conflict? You're watching Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Divi Gopalan. Now, it is one of Muammar Gaddafi's last bastions of support, but Bani Walid is proving difficult to conquer. Hopes of a peaceful takeover floundered after negotiators failed to work out a deal for Gaddafi loyalists to surrender the city. Instead, fighting intensified. But the rebel push is faced with fierce resistance from fighters loyal to Gaddafi. So this now has cast doubt over Libyan rebels' claims that Bani Walid will be in rebel control within 48 hours. Sue Turton has more.
The hard core of Gaddafi's forces that refuse to surrender, firing on Libyan fighters' positions outside of Bani Walid. Many of these rebels had pushed into the residential areas of the city on Friday night, including 20-year-old Hisham Sawalem, a British Libyan who we had talked to on Al Jazeera 2 days ago.
We shot them with RPGs and Kalashnikovs, FNs, whatever we have, and then I think NATO hit the what's it called, the storage for weapons and stuff. So it started blowing up and they started running away. So then we pushed them back, and then we basically we got close to the city, and we had to come back here again because NATO said we have to strike, so we have to pull back.
One of the NTC's negotiators confirmed Hisham's friend was one of 2 fighters to be killed.
We have 2 martyrs this morning, one with the sniper and the other one with the rocket launcher, and about 3 or 4 injured. Their injury is superficial.
At a school converted into a field hospital back from the front line, doctors treat 6 others for bullet wounds and shrapnel injuries. We see a drone flying overhead and hear what sounds like an aerial bombardment soon after over the brow of the hill. If it's aimed at positions close to here, it misses. Gaddafi responds with sniper bullets and artillery. The fighters urge us to pull back.
We've been brought up to just 3 kilometres back from the Medina in Bani Walid. We were told this was a safe position because they had managed to stick their front lines across the brow of that hill, but they're just now taking incoming. So we're about to rush back whilst they try and find out what is still firing on them at this position.
The artillery lands a few hundred metres from the road, causing no damage or casualties, but plenty of concern. Far from retreating, Hisham walks back up to the front, waiting for the all-clear to head back into Bani Walid, in the hope that NATO has cleared some of those hardcore soldiers from Gaddafi's lines. Sue Turton, Al Jazeera, the outskirts of Bani Walid.
This now brings us to the question, why is Bani Walid so important? Well, firstly, its strategic location is at a crossroads between the capital and areas to the east, west and south, making it vital to controlling the country. It's ruled by the majority WARFALLA tribe, who have long maintained strong ties to Muammar Gaddafi. And it is these forces who have so far managed to resist rebel fighters. It's also believed that some of his former officials may have taken refuge there, as well as 1 or 2 of his sons. Well, to discuss this, we are joined by Faraj Najem. He's a historian and author of Tribes, Islam and State in Libya. And in London, we have Nouman Ben Othman, a senior analyst for de-radicalization at the Quilliam Foundation. Mr. Ben Othman is also former head of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, which he left in 2002. While in Dubai, Mohammed Ali Abdallah, Deputy Secretary General of the National Front for the Salvation of Libya. That's an opposition movement to Gaddafi's regime. Well, I want to start first with Mr. Najem, who is in Benghazi. I'd like to ask him why he thinks Bani Walid is still so important and so resistant, despite the fact that the capital has already been taken over.
Well, Bani Walid is important in 3 ways. Firstly, because of its geographical location. It's to the southeast of Tripoli, about 180 kilometers, but also right south of Misrata, and it's the passageway to the south. So it's terribly, terribly important. Also, the tribe or the tribes or the cluster of tribes that live in Bani Walid, they have affiliates everywhere else in Libya. As a matter of fact, only 8% of WARFALLA live in Bani Walid, and more than 45% in the east of Libya, and the rest scattered all over the west and the south. So that's the second most important element about WARFALLA. But also, WARFALLA has been known that it has an association with the regime. Association sometimes in favor and sometimes at odds with the regime. And therefore, the regime has decided what's remaining of it, that they should take refuge in Bani Walid, and they thought that they could be better protected there.
Now, the WARFALLA tribe, who are the main population of Bani Walid, have been very close to the Gaddafi regime, as Mr. Najem mentioned. But Mr. Abdullah, what do they have to lose if the Bani Walid does finally fall to the rebels?
Well, it's very important to understand that when we say that WARFALLA has its associations with Gaddafi and its support, it's due to the sheer fact that Gaddafi succeeded during his 42-year reign to create a parallel leadership to most of the tribes in Libya, including WARFALLA. And this leadership of these tribes has loyalties to themselves first and to Gaddafi, and then thirdly maybe to their tribes. These leadership don't necessarily represent the legitimate opinion or the traditional leadership of these tribes, and WARFALLA is no exception. So therefore, these leaders are not acting as traditional tribal leaders, but these people are operating more as outlaws that happen to be representing a tribe because they were put in place there by Gaddafi. So therefore, their decision-making process is not necessarily within the traditional tribal decision-making that you would normally think of. The other thing is that, and to add on Dr. Faraj's comment earlier, is the importance of what Bani Walid is. There are 60,000 or almost 80,000 people living in Bani Walid who are under besiege. Okay, these people are under the mercy of Gaddafi's regime, and just like the rest of Libya for the last 42 years, they have the right to be free of this dictatorship, and this is another important element.
Noman bin Othman, how much support do you think there is amongst the residents of Bani Walid for the Gaddafi regime still?
Well, first of all, it's very difficult because we don't have like a specific and credible intel within Bani Walid or part of WARFALLA tribe living there. But just, I think, some claims, they said it's just only around 1,000 soldiers loyal to Colonel Gaddafi. This is what is like represent like Colonel Gaddafi in Bani Walid. I think I find it very difficult because if we talk about 80,000 or maybe 100,000 population living in Bani Walid, it's extremely impossible to control them only with 1,000 soldiers, even if they are like top-class soldiers and professionals. So I think we should accept the reality, like at least some of the population there in Bani Walid, which is not WARFALLA necessarily, as my colleagues mentioned earlier. If you take into account like 40%, maybe 45% of WARFALLA tribes living in the eastern part of the country, as far as we're concerned now, most of them, they are part of the Libyan revolution. But I think the resistance in WARFALLA, not necessarily even linked to Colonel Gaddafi or people they believe in him, but just I think at one stage, if the negotiation carry on, maybe the people living in WARFALLA, they will start and they will understand like maybe there is a way to get like a mutual benefit, win-win situation. Rather more important to talk about they are loyal to Colonel Gaddafi or not. I think maybe the main issue is like the people there try to protect their own interests. This is what I'm comfortable about to describe the situation in WARFALLA.
Mr. Najem, I'd like to pick up on the point of negotiations. Given that several deadlines have come and gone, and given that there is this pocket of resistance that don't seem to be backing down, do you think there's still room for negotiations, or is a bloodbath inevitable?
Well, let me just say, let me just correct one thing. I think what I said, WARFALLA is perceived by others that it's supporting the regime, but actually the overwhelming majority of WARFALLA, they are not really supporting the regime. However, as my colleagues did insist, that Bani Walid has been hijacked by some elements of WARFALLA that associated with the regime, as well as the regime's cronies who are from other tribes who have taken refuge into WARFALLA. Now, to the negotiation, I think the NTC is very clear to see this bloodless, to spare further Libyan blood. They didn't want any people to be killed, and that's why they're giving them the benefit of the doubt, and they wouldn't mind extending it. I was talking to some WARFALLA members of the operation room here in Benghazi, and they're really keen and taking Bani Walid by force, and they said we can't really allow Bani Walid to be hijacked any further. However, I think they've been given too much room to think about it, but those elements, those rogue elements, amongst them are Gaddafi's sons. I think two of them, Saif and Saadi, believed to be in there, as well as other extreme elements who have hijacked the whole place, and they're not allowing the people of Bani Walid to let go and join the rest of Libya. And therefore, undoubtedly, this has to be sorted out in one way or another, and I fear and I suspect it's going to be bloody.
Now, Mr. Abdallah, you've been with a group that's long resisted Gaddafi rule. The NTC is now poised to take over Libya. Bani Walid is one of the last strongholds there is. But do you think that once Bani Walid is taken and maybe the other two strongholds, Gaddafi strongholds, is the battle over for Libya?
Well, there is an element of closure, and once every single inch of Libyan soil is free of Gaddafi's control, there is an element of closure there that allows the Libyan people led by the NTC to engage in the transitional process. However, another element of closure, which some people would argue is even more important, is actually the capture of Colonel Gaddafi or killing him, because as long as he's alive, whether he's inside of Libya or outside of Libya, he will not let Libyans rest. So the liberating the land, whether it's Sirt, Bani Walid or Sabha and the surrounding areas of Sabha, that is a major closure step towards the transitional process. However, I think one thing we have to understand is that, and we have to be very careful as well, as Libyans and the NTC, I think, understands this very well, is the time factor in the negotiation element or the perception of negotiation has to be put towards reality. Right now, there isn't really no negotiations. The two factions that are fighting here, one is the Libyan people and the other group is the outlaws of Gaddafi. These two groups are not actually negotiating. Those who are come out from the city and are negotiating, these people are part of Bani Walid. They are citizens of Bani Walid, and they are victims themselves. So therefore, I think giving time only allows Gaddafi's forces to sort of regroup and take out their anger and their revenge towards the Libyan people. We should not fall into the trap of Gaddafi here, where we distinctly treat certain cities or certain tribes differently. This is the Libyan people's revolution. We had to take up arms to defend ourselves in order to reach our objectives. I think treating certain cities or certain tribes uniquely only emphasizes the point that Gaddafi wants to highlight, is this is a tribal conflict, which is not the reality. So this is something I think we have to be careful that we don't fall into this trap.
So, Mr. bin Othman, why is there so much reluctance to take Bani Walid by storm? Why not just go in there? They have the firepower, they have the backing of NATO. Why don't they just go in there and dislodge the fighters with full force?
Well, I think it's a very complicated process. It has its own political dimension, and more importantly, it has its military dimension as well. I strongly believe there's still a lack of intel with inside the city itself, how strong the loyalists to Colonel Gaddafi, soldiers or people inside the city, their positions, what's their plan. So I think all these kind of intel, it's crucial to the final plan from the NTC forces, to launch their final assault. I strongly believe, and I think even the people inside believe, refused to surrender, which is like Gaddafi's loyalists. They understand sooner or later, there is no way they can stand this fight for long, either today or tomorrow. The NTC forces, they will, if I might say, maybe conquer the city, without a doubt. That's why I think the NTC forces, they already established their upper hand. So they have the luxury, to make their own strategic calculations, which is the best way to win the city, either by a political settlement or forced settlement. So that's why if you see even the NTC itself, including Mr. Jalil himself, he still try to achieve his goal through a different means and tools. And we don't forget, most of the brigades now from the NTC forces ready to launch their final assault to seize the city. Most of them, they are from WARFALLA, the same tribe itself. That's why I think we don't need a real bloody battle inside Bani Walid. When you have this privilege, when you have this situation, you're ready, your enemy is very weak. He knows there is no way they can stand for long. So I think maybe for political reasons, and as I mentioned, military reasons, to make it very smooth ride, if I might say, like what happened in Tripoli, to give more time for people inside Bani Walid itself to organize themselves, prepare themselves, and to decide what's the right moment to launch their own uprising inside the city. That will make it very easy for the people launching their own assault from outside the city. Politically as well, it's very important. I think the better if we try to avoid this bloodshed, because we have, as we mentioned earlier, Bani Walid, WARFALLA, it's maybe, I think it's the largest or bigger tribe in Libya. Some people, they believe it's around 1 million population, which is a huge population. So I think to make a political settlement towards Bani Walid more, I think, comfortable for the new Libya. And as I mentioned, it doesn't mean the NTC forces, they are discussing the situation from a weaker position.
Right.
No, everybody knows they established their upper hand.
Okay.
That's my point.
Let's get the view from Benghazi. Mr. Najm, we're talking about the political maneuverings that is behind the takeover of Bani Walid. There's a certain reluctance to go in with all guns blazing, but at the same time, the longer they delay it, the harder it's going to be for them to take control and start resuming power over the country. What is going on behind the scenes there that is taking so long to go into Bani Walid and start the complete onslaught?
Well, as already been mentioned, I think there are negotiations, but also there are wheels and deals are done behind doors. We must not lose sight of the fact that the situation in Bani Walid is quite grim. There is no water, there is a chronic shortage of food, there is no electricity, no telephone connections. People are literally imprisoned into their homes. They can't come out because of these thugs who are outside are trigger happy. So there is a serious problem there. Now, the revolutionaries who are surrounding Bani Walid, the overwhelming majority are WARFALLAs themselves, and they wanted to go in there and deliver their brothers from the miseries that they are in. But also, as one of them, he said to me, he said, I would love to go in there and do it for Libya by catching either Gaddafi's sons or maybe himself and presenting him as a sacrifice to Libya. So there is a sense of redemption, but also a sense of patriotism that the WARFALLAs, they need to do something about Bani Walid by cleansing it of Gaddafi's thugs, but also of allowing Bani Walid to join its natural place along the Libyan revolution.
Now, Mr. Abdullah, we've been talking about, for many years your group has resisted Gaddafi rule. There are two other areas, Sabah and Sirte, that still need to be taken over, that need to be taken over by the rebels. Why do you think that there is so much focus on Bani Walid at the moment, and what will it take to get those areas under NTC control?
Well, I think first of all for Sabha, Sabha within the city itself is actually under the control of the revolutionaries according to the information that we've received from a lot of our sources inside of Sabha. Gaddafi's forces have besieged Sabha and they've basically imposed a blockade around the city and are shelling it constantly and have cut the city off of electricity as well as water source and telecommunications as in Sirt and Bani Walid. And I really strongly emphasize this point is that this is the top priority and the main motive behind the importance of being able to break this siege and liberating these cities. As Dr. Faraj mentioned, these cities need to take their natural position in the revolution. They are a part of Libya. They are part of the fabric of Libya as well as a part of the population of Libya. We cannot move forward into a transitional process until these areas and every single inch of Libya is liberated. And coming back to the political discussions, regardless whether it's Bani Walid or the others, I think this is really a sad conclusion if that's really what's happening, because at the end of the day, those who are negotiating any kind of political deals or outcomes are the ones who are actually associated with the Gaddafi regime and probably have conspired and committed crimes. If the political discussions that are taking place are in order to find closure and exit for these types of people, I think this would be a really sad scenario, and I hope it's not the case, and I really strongly doubt that. I think people are led by Mr. Mustafa Abdul Jalil. They really want to extend the olive branch and try to minimize the casualties in Libya. I think right now we've reached a point to where people are suffering in all of these cities. Bani Walid, especially because of the situation, it's close to Misrata, close to Tripoli, at a crossroads. I think it's more urgent to sort of break the siege there. In Sirt this morning, there were Grad missiles fired on the revolutionaries on the eastern banks, more than 7 people killed. Therefore, the military urgency there is there. I think the political urgency is at for the greater Libya is definitely there in order for us to be able to move forward. And even more importantly, if Gaddafi is actually in one of those 3 cities, then we hit 2 birds with 1 stone. You find the real 2 elements of closure that we need in order to move forward. And this is what Libyans want. All Libyans, regardless of where we're from, we want to move forward. We want to go beyond Gaddafi. Gaddafi's regime is finished. He is no longer the leader of Libya, no longer in power in Libya. We want to move forward with our country, with our future.
Now, Mr. Abdallah speaks of closure, but what will bring everything to closure at the heart of the matter is Gaddafi, bringing him to justice. Mr. Najm, what is the view in Benghazi? Where is Gaddafi?
Well, no one knows. I mean, there is a wide belief that he might be in the desert and around Sabha, somewhere in one of these towns, because I didn't think that he has fled into one of the neighboring countries, because he's a wanted criminal by the ICC. However, there is a wide belief that at least 2 of his sons are barricaded in Sirt, in Bani Walid, and another one, along with some thugs, are in Sirt. And there is a wide public mood that maybe it's about time to move in. You know, people are really expressing displeasure of this reluctance and extending these, if you like, deadlines. And people of all shades, they're saying that I think enough is enough and let's just move into Sirt, Sabha and Bani Walid. Firstly, to reprehend those criminals, and secondly, to relieve and deliver our people who are hijacked inside, but also to allow these cities to join the rest of Libya, and let's just get on with the process of rebuilding Libya.
Okay, Mr. Belothman, as we're talking about the final cities to be taken over by NTC, where do you think Gaddafi is? Do you think he's still in the country?
Yes, indeed, yeah. And I don't think at one stage he will leave the country because of his nature, you know. Everybody knows Colonel Gaddafi, he's a security freak, you know. And as soon as if he decide like to cross the border to one of the neighbors, like more likely Niger maybe, than to Mali, I think that means he's gonna lost between 2 brackets, his sovereignty, you know. He's not his own boss anymore. So that's why I strongly believe he will try to do everything possible, you know, to stay in Libya, maneuvering, you know, from here and there, especially the desert at the southern part of the country. It's a huge area and needs, I think, exceptional and sophisticated technology, you know, to track him down. So I strongly believe he's still around that area down to the south. There's a lot of like information, some of them credible but not confirmed,
And with that, we'll have to leave it there. A very interesting discussion on Libya and one of the final bastions, Bani Walid. And thanks to all our guests, Faraj Najem in Benghazi, Noman bin Othman in London, and Mohammed Ali Abdallah in Dubai. And thank you so much for joining us here in this edition of Inside Story. We, of course, welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Goodbye for now.